You might look at an old wooden cabin and think it's just something simple, rustic, the kind of place city people escape to on the weekends. But when the outside temperature drops to 30 borinks, the kind of cold that freezes steel and turns a breath into crystals in a single exhale, researchers in Finland saw something inside that 200-year-old home that no familiar law of physics could explain. Inside lived an 82-year-old woman named Helma. Her fire had gone out 18 hours earlier. The ashes were cold. No electricity, no heater, only the thick, heavy silence of a winter night. They brought thermal cameras, preparing for the worst, but the numbers that appeared made the entire team stare at one another for several seconds without saying a word. The floor was 71 Griesenv, the ceiling 58 Tedium. The floor was 13 Trediev warmer than the ceiling, even though every textbook insists heat always rises. They checked the modern house right next door, built in 1985, heater running all night, a 340 bill waiting, ceiling hot, floor freezing, the owner shivering under 3 layers of blankets. Meanwhile, Helme was walking barefoot on warm wood, sleeping peacefully, while the entire area was nothing but wind and ice. This wasn't a miracle. It was an ancient heating system humans perfected centuries ago and then forgot. And if you've ever lost heat during a cold snap, or ever wondered why modern houses somehow get colder the more you heat them, feel free to leave a thought, because what comes next is going to be even harder to believe. Imagine you're a Russian farmer in the 17th century. Winter lasts 7 months. The forest is buried in white ice, and firewood is so scarce, each log carries the value of a full meal. You know something modern people never even consider. Building the fire wrong can kill your whole family. If the fire burns too strong, the wood will run out before dawn, and the cold will creep into the house like a predator. If it burns too weak, the smoke will gather in the kitchen, choke the lungs, and leave the whole family suffocated in their sleep. Caught in that fragile balance, Russians created what they called the pech, a massive brick structure weighing tons, where the flame isn't allowed to travel straight upward, but is forced through a winding maze more than 30 feet long. No engineers, no heat charts, just centuries of trial, error, and observation, and they accidentally discovered the perfect speed for smoke to transfer enough heat into the brick without dying inside the channels. When the fire goes out, the pech stays warm for hours, warm enough for the whole family to spread blankets on the flat surface at the top of the stove and sleep there, using that final reservoir of heat to push back a cold, harsh enough to freeze a horse standing still. And if that detail already feels unbelievable, remember, there are 4 more secrets that will overturn everything you thought you knew about heating. If thick wooden walls are the thermal memory of an old house, then the thing that keeps your body alive through the coldest nights sits right under your feet. Something most of us never pay attention to: the floor. Not a foam insulated floor, not a floor with hot water pipes running underneath, but a giant thermal machine weighing nearly 14 tons, created by 17th century Scandinavians who had no idea they were leaping hundreds of years ahead of modern science. Its structure sounds primitive. The bottom layer is round timber logs resting on stone piers. Above that, a 12-inch mix of sand, clay, and old ash, and only then a 3-inch hardwood plank floor. But that mixture, dense, heavy, almost 180 pounds per square foot, turns the entire room into a massive battery. When the masonry heater sitting directly on the floor releases heat, the warmth doesn't just rise. It sinks into the sand and clay layer, saturating every mineral grain and locking the heat in for hours. The fire dies, the chimney cools, the house goes silent, but the floor stays at 68 to 70 degrees Celsius for the next 18 hours, even when the wind outside slices at 20 degrees Celsius. And here's the twist that makes people sit up straight. Modern radiant heat floors, the kind that cost thousands of dollars and run on electricity, stay warm for barely 2 hours after shutting off. 2 hours versus 18. One system demands constant power, the other holds heat like sun-soaked stone without spending a single watt. Now the real question hits. In a 3-day blackout like the Texas freeze, who's actually living comfortably? The person relying on a 50-watt pump, or the one standing on 14 tons of thermal mass? If you've ever felt your winter floor go cold as steel, or you want to compare your own home, drop a comment. The truth in the next part is going to shock you. You only need to open your front door in winter for about 5 seconds. Just 5 seconds, and you'll see the cold rushing across the floor like an invisible animal, crawling low, dense, silent, but strong enough to suck away the warmth your heating system fought for hours to create. It sounds small, but in reality, a single door opening can erase up to 30 minutes of heat, force the heater to compensate, waste money, and reset the entire room back to freezer mode. And that simple effect is exactly what killed millions of homes during the 2021 Texas freeze, when 4.5 million households lost power, and most modern houses dropped to freezing in just a few hours, because every front door became an entry point for the White Death. Older generations chose something completely different, something so simple it's almost unbelievable. An airlock, a small unheated buffer room sandwiched between 2 doors, where cold air gets trapped before it can spill into the living space. You stand outside in 20 seconds, open the first door, step into the 40 degrees cold chamber,
It's been a long day.
Close it, then open the second door. The cold never touches the main room. Some 1680 cabins in northern Sweden even angled the doors so it was physically impossible to open both at once unless you wanted to slam yourself into a wall. Modern houses lose their heat after a few seconds of exposure. Old houses could open their doors dozens of times a day and stay warm as if the wind had never touched them. And if you've ever spent a night freezing because of a draft, you already know why the next part is even more terrifying. In a sudden drop to 20 degrees C, you'll see the difference between 2 houses more clearly than in any scientific test. Modern walls, hollow, light, just a few paper-thin layers, turn instantly into giant sheets of ice. Meanwhile, a 10-inch log wall in a 17th century cabin stays still, calm, almost as if it's holding warmth inside its own chest. Old builders didn't use the term thermal flywheel, but they understood that a wall weighing several tons could absorb heat during the day, from the fire, from sunlight, from the body heat of livestock, and release it slowly through the night, keeping the house stable even when the weather outside swings 40 degrees in a single afternoon. A Swedish test in 2017 showed that modern homes fluctuate up to 15 degrees every night, forcing the sleeper to wake again and again, too hot, then too cold, while log homes shift only 3 degrees, almost perfectly steady, like a car cruising on the highway thanks to a heavy flywheel balancing every force. But here's what makes people sit upright. The total mass of wood in a traditional cabin can reach 60 tons. a living thermal battery wrapped around you, something a modern house built with 500 pounds of lightweight materials could never achieve. And if you've ever felt your home temperature swing way too fast, you'll want to see the next part, because the real reason is hidden in the air you're breathing. There's something strange that anyone who has ever stepped into an old wooden cabin in the middle of winter feels instantly, yet can barely put into words. The air in there feels fuller. Not dry, not throat-burning, not the kind of air that cracks your skin or leaves your lips bleeding the way a tightly sealed modern house does. Old builders had no humidifiers, no sensors, no concept of hygroscopic buffering. But they knew that living wood, the kind that still holds its grain, its oils, the breath of the forest, can do something every 21st century drywall wall is helpless against. It adjusts the air on its own, like a living organism that somehow knows what you need. When humidity rises past 60% because of cooking, drying clothes, or simply having the whole family gathered in one small room, the wood instantly absorbs moisture, pulling it deep into its fibers as if it were drinking the excess air to help you breathe easier. When humidity drops below 35%, the wood releases it back, slowly, steadily, keeping the room in the ideal 40 to 55% range, a golden zone that even smart homes struggle to maintain without machines running, non-stop. But the most mysterious part isn't the humidity at all. It's something you can't see. The organic compounds released by modern furniture, the VOCs floating through every new apartment, get naturally absorbed by wood. Finnish studies show that log cabins can reduce VOC levels by 20 to 30% just through their walls. People say wooden houses smell clean, feel pure. But that isn't imagination. It's the science hidden in the grain, passed down accidentally by our ancestors. And if you've ever wondered why your own home gets drier the more you heat it in winter, feel free to leave a thought. The next part is going to make you rethink the entire structure of your house. When modern people look at a room with a fireplace placed in the inner corner, they usually assume it's just an aesthetic choice or the homeowner's personal preference. But for the builders of 17th century cabins, that position wasn't decoration. It was a survival law, a silent rule they never wrote down, yet followed without exception. Put the heat source in the coldest point of the house. It sounds like a contradiction, but that contradiction is exactly what kept them alive. Through winters so long the creek outside froze solid from October to May. A corner is always where heat escapes the fastest, where two walls take the full force of the wind, where moisture gathers, and where mold appears first in almost every modern building. Any engineer can tell you it's the dead zone of a house. Yet old builders placed the stove right there, letting the largest mass of heat attack the house's weakest point, turning the coldest zone into the driest, warmest, and most stable one. But the real twist lies here. When a fireplace sits against an exterior wall the way we build them today, a huge portion of heat escapes straight outside. When it sits in an inner corner, all four faces of the stove radiate toward the living space. No unit of heat wasted. Swedish surveys show that across hundreds of years, not a single traditional cabin placed its stove on an exterior wall. Zero. And if you've ever wondered why some corners of your home always stay cold, share your experience. The next part will make you realize we've lost more than we think. For decades, modern building codes have insisted that our value is the ultimate measure of a warm house. A high R value means good insulation, which
feels
means
good
your
to finally
home
be
is
wrapped by the
up
fire.
to standard. But if things were truly that simple, why are millions of people still shivering inside houses with sky-high R values? Why does a single power outage of just a few hours send an entire home plunging to meat locker temperatures? The answer, uncomfortable but accurate, lies in something the construction industry never wants to mention. They measure what benefits the contractors. Thin, light, cheap materials. Not what keeps human beings warm. Heat retention. Thermal mass. The very thing that keeps a 200-year-old log cabin warm. Through the night, even after the fire dies at dusk, is completely absent from every modern standard. You can have a high R value and still have hollow walls, hollow floors, a hollow house. And once heat is blown away, nothing holds it. That's why thousands of modern homes swing wildly between hot and cold, while old cabins stay steady like a sun-soaked stone. And here's the most absurd part. Those supposedly scientific standards ignore the single most important factor for surviving winter. If you've ever wondered why a code-approved house can still feel freezing, leave your thoughts, because the final part will make you question when we started getting it all wrong. Have you ever noticed that every winter, building authorities roll out glossy reports filled with charts, colors, and slogans like, "Modern homes are safer than ever," yet not a single person steps forward when code-approved houses turn ice cold just a few hours into a blackout? They flaunt high R values as if they're gold medals, but R value only measures how well a material blocks heat from passing through. It does not measure the thing that actually keeps your body warm: heat retention, which means the system is optimizing exactly what benefits contractors: cheap, thin, fast-to-install materials, and optimizing the wrong thing when it comes to human survival. The result is a paradox that sounds like political satire. The newer the house, the faster it freezes, the cheaper the material, the more praise it gets. And 200-year-old cabins end up proving that our modern standards have been measuring the wrong thing from the start. You can spend $500,000 on a nationally certified home, but the moment the power goes out for 4 hours, that house drops to freezing. Meanwhile, a traditional 60-ton log cabin stays warm for almost an entire day on a single morning fire. And when the question finally comes, why do modern homes lose to old ones? You'll never get a straight answer, because that truth hits the very core of the system's interests. If you've ever suspected that someone is selling us a standard that can't even protect the people living inside it, say your thoughts in the comments, because the final part is going to expose what no certificate would ever dare to print. There's a question almost no one dares to face, yet it's the thread that ties this entire story together. If winter hits and the power grid goes down for 3 days, will your home become a shelter or a walk-in freezer? The answer isn't in the heater brand. It isn't in the R value printed on a certificate. It's in how the house was born in the first place. Modern homes depend entirely on electricity, on pumps, on fans, on control systems. Break one link and the entire thermal structure collapses, letting the cold crawl into every room like a creature with intent. But old homes, log cabins, masonry stoves, thermal mass floors, airlocks, walls weighing tens of tons, operate like survival machines that need nothing but a morning fire. When the modern system stops, they keep going. When cold wind shreds thin layers of insulation, they hold warmth like a sun-soaked stone. And when an entire city falls into darkness, They still let people sleep safely under a warm roof. That isn't primitive. It's knowledge sharpened over centuries, knowledge we abandoned in just a few decades. And here is the final warning. If we don't relearn those principles, if we don't understand how heat actually behaves, if we keep building houses for simulation software instead of for real climate, then the next winter will teach us the lesson in the harshest way possible. If any part of this story resonates with your own experience, share it below. And if you want to follow the next breakdowns to truly understand how humans once survived the cold, don't forget to subscribe. The coming parts will open doors you didn't even realize were closed.